So what is the primary purpose of people's shops? We always say safety is the first consideration. We want to make sure everybody has a safe environment to operate in, and I'll expand on each of these points in the next few slides. We want to store required supplies. We have to be smart about that. Storage of necessary equipment, and a working area for projects requiring additional resources. So the shop has several primary purposes, but we want to make sure safety is always first. Communication tools, such as whiteboards, order boards, communications of where work orders were left off, on call, situations where everybody needs to be aware of. Everybody goes to the shop. It's like a bulletin board. So there's a nice looking organized shop. It's got some good supplies. It seems to be somewhat organized. I don't know if I'd really consider these valves here, but they're trying. They could use a little help. They're a great start. Unlike this one, and I have a feeling there's a few of those out there because I, until very recently, have been a regional maintenance director for a long time and seen a lot of these. So we want to help our people, or help you to help your people, correct these so that they're more usable. That's a nice looking shop there. Organized, clean, exits are easily marked, accessible. Unlike this, looks like they're going to do some pressure washing, but that's not a great place to store bleach. So let's get a little further into which safety zone we'd rather find. Maybe the one on the left, or the one you have to move a golf cart and a dryer door to get to. And you might spill some coil cleaner on yourself while you're at it. So now we know what we don't want to see and what we'd like to see. Let's think about some of the considerations we have. You definitely have to keep your shop clean and clear of hazards. You have to be able to walk into the shop, get to what you're going to get, and not trip over something, have to excessively move things, or be worried about what's going to fall if you pull something out. Flammables and toxic items should be in one of those wonderful flammables cabinets, or a different locked, if it's just a toxic item, a different locked or controlled area, preferably behind a door, so that they can't accidentally be accessed. Prepare for spills in advance and clean them immediately. If you have coil cleaner in a shop, you know at some point that could be spilled. Do you want, while it's running down the floor of the shop, do you want to be wondering how you're going to clean it up? Or do you already want to have a spill kit, whether it's cat litter or an industrial purpose absorption agent, should already be in the area of that potential spill. If you have a spill, don't go do a work order and say, I'll clean it up when I'm done, I'm in a hurry because the resident's waiting. Your fellow employee may walk in the shop 2 minutes later and slip on that and be injured. Not only is that bad for him, but it's bad for your entire team, because now you're going to be running short while they're on workers' comp, and you're going to probably have a very long counseling session. So we don't want that. We want people to be prepared, take care of things immediately, make sure they're done. Make sure it's organized. How much time can be saved if the maintenance employees can walk in, go exactly what they need, and go back along their busy day? If you walk in the supermarket, aren't usually all the vegetables together, and the fruits and the meats? Of course they are. Why aren't shops the same way? Design it and arrange it for how it's used. Different properties have different needs. The older the property, it has different needs as well. Many of us have high demand on plumbing. If you're in the older properties, you've got 5 to 10 different types of plumbing, and it can be quite a challenge. So you want to make sure it's arranged. It might be a 3-phase property, so you might want to have your plumbing arranged in 3 different phases for the 3 different types of things you have. Always store liquid items on the lowest shelf or floor. That seems like a simple request, because if it falls, it's going to get your shoes, but it's not going to splash up onto your clothes or, heaven forbid, your eyes. You never want liquids anywhere above your waist, regardless of whether it's the lowest shelf or not. Always protect yourself. And again, communications tools. You want to have order boards. You want to have plan of the week, a goal. Maybe to something that somebody did really well. They got a resident comment. Let's put that up there. You know, Mrs. Jones loved what Jorge did yesterday. Keep up the great work. Recognize people in public. Individuality. Not every shop is the same. Not every property. Some properties have a large shop. Some have several smaller shops. If you have a large 700 unit property, you most likely have different areas of storage throughout that site. You might want to store certain materials closer to where they'll be used. That saves time, is much more efficient. But it is a little bit more of a challenge to keep these stocked and organized because there are multiple locations. You may have a 15 or a 30-story mid-rise or high-rise, and you're going to have small shops on certain floors. You're going to want to decide what is in each of those shops and what makes sense. If you have rooftop air conditioning, not only do you have the challenge of how do you get to, but where do you store the AC equipment? If it's a 5-story building, it would be maybe detrimental to keep them in the basement shop when you have a storage on the 5th floor. Reduce the movement, reduce the risk of hurting. Consider a smarter way to get the equipment up and down. You may have employees with different clearances or certifications. If you have someone who is strictly a groundskeeper that does nothing but picking up the grounds, maybe taking care of the pools and general outdoor challenge or tasks, you might not need to give him clearance to the air conditioning equipment or the key machine or where the keys for the residents are held. You may use temps for these. You may use a housekeeping service that uses your chemicals because you have a savings by providing them bulk chemicals. So you may consider different shops containing different things for different people. When you're thinking about how to design it, involve everyone that will use or inspect the shops. We can be very blind to what fits our needs or what our perception of easy is. But if you're not the one doing it every day, I don't know what is more important to the grounds guy. I don't really know his entire day. I know he does a great job, but if he can think of a way to make his life easier, I would be loving that. Alarms and camera systems. If you have alarms and camera systems, make sure you arm them. I've seen many alarm systems that are never set, and then shops get robbed and things are missing. Also, you want to store your more expensive or higher demand for thieves items where they are covered by cameras and or alarms. One of the first things you want to make sure you have is proper PPE. I know right now this is a real challenge because there's a higher demand for it, and if you didn't already have your month's stock, you probably are out by now. I know it's slowly coming back in, but you can't expect people to go in and do discoloration treatment without N95s and masks and gloves. You can't expect them to work on air conditioners without protective equipment. So you want to make sure that that is always in stock. Group items that are used together near each other. I mean, if you know your task is plumbing, all the plumbing should be fairly close together. Electrical and air conditioning, a lot of things cross over, those should be close to each other. Again, your individual site will dictate what makes the most sense. Whatever you use the most of, closest to the door. Having said that, never store things near the door that could block your exit in the event of an emergency. You don't want a situation where a liquid spill could prevent your exit, or new door slabs could topple over and block your door. Label bins and items and maintain them so they're readable. If you don't know what the part is, you can't use it. If you can't find the bin, you have to pull each one out and look at it to see what's in it. That's time consuming. Labels also assist you in reordering because you can quickly see there's an empty bin, what was in it. Even though we ask everybody to say, what did you use the last of, put it on the board, it still happens. And again, easiest access to the most frequently used parts. The easier you can make the job on your tech, the better job he'll do. Consider separate make-ready and operational areas. I've had great success with this in the past. There's nothing worse than trying to get a unit ready for a move-in, but you need one thing because somebody just used the last disposal in an occupied unit. Well, we should be ordering ahead of time, and actually Van touched on this last week. As we're stacking these work orders, we're ordering parts in for these. So when it's time to go again, we will be able to do that. But we still have to maintain make-readies. So by having basically two separate supply stations, you will be so much more effective because you can complete make-readies instead of the everything but this, everything but that. Believe it or not, that is a step ladder that somebody used a deadbolt for. That's not a good thing. It was not stored well. So what do we want to think about? You want to secure your ladders so they don't get damaged. How many times do you see people back golf carts into ladders? A lot. And then they get the damage on the bottom, and you have to replace a relatively expensive ladder, or worse yet, make a correction like we just saw and risk injury. Ladders, you want to make sure they're out of the way, secured so they won't fall over or hit people in the head, or if you mount them on ceilings, you run the risk of people injuring their backs, bringing them down. So be very smart about your ladders. If they're stored outside, chain them on two sides. Tools with sharp points or blades should be stored in a manner to eliminate contact hazards. So put them behind doors. Put them to where the blades are behind a piece of wood and they secure themselves so they can't accidentally fall. Don't want any injuries. We want smart, happy people. Check safety components before and after every use. Obviously, you want to check it before you use it, but if you check it when you're done, if something's happened while you were using it, you have a chance to correct it. So the next time someone needs that piece of equipment, it's either been repaired or has a note on it that says new part on order or new part needs installed. Golf cart maintenance repairs. We could probably do an entire half-hour section on just golf cart repairs. It's smart to keep the water, distilled water, up in them. Don't inflate the tires with refrigerant because that's a bad thing as far as the EPA thinks. And make sure they're safe. Tighten the bolts and keep a log of everything. Electrically operated. Check your plugs and cords again before and after each use. You want to make sure that you're not going to get yourself electrocuted. Make sure the ground's in sight. Make sure they have not been scuffed or where they will short out or not provide a ground. Store cords properly to prevent damage. All too many times I see people wrap them very tight, and over time that destroys them. If the cords do need replaced, they can be purchased separately and installed. Paint sprayers should be properly cleaned after use. Doesn't mean necessarily every day, but it does mean if you paint 3 straight days in a row and it's going to sit there for a week, you clean it. Again, an ounce of prevention saves you a lot of money. We would love to sell you all new handles every day, but that's not effective for either one of us. Gas operated, check oil levels before each use. Just because it has been sitting there and I checked the oil last time doesn't mean that it didn't seep out or leak while it sat there, or someone else used it since I have. So you want to make sure the oil levels are good. Allow it to cool and wipe down equipment. While you're wiping it down, you can see if there's any damage. And also, it just makes it look so much more professional when you see clean, shiny equipment. It makes you feel good instead of, oh, not that beat up old pressure washer that looks like somebody dragged it behind, a golf cart for a week. Prepare equipment for storage. If you are in a summer or a winter in storage, like up north, you may have some snow blowers, and down here in Florida, we have some things we only periodically use. Drain the gas. With the ethanol gas, it's very hard on these items. Personally, I use marine gas if it's available, which is non-ethanol. Not everybody has access to that, but it is a great way to reduce the problems we see with our carburetors. Air conditioning, keep refrigerants separate and track all usage. Van and I have been teaching online EPA this week, and it's refreshing to get all that back up on the table. It's important everything is tracked. That way you know where it's gone. You can predict where your leaks are. You know nobody's using it where they shouldn't, and that they're using the proper refrigerant. Always have spare nitrogen, oxygen, and acetylene tanks for service work. There is nothing worse as a technician than when you're going out to repair something and you run out of one of those three gases. You can no longer effectively do the job correctly. You either end up with a poorly made repair, or you don't properly flush it with nitrogen and you get junk into your brand new beautiful unit or your new TXV valve that you've just destroyed. So always have spares. Follow manufacturer's service directions for fluids and filters. Recovery units, most of them are oilless, but not all. They all do need the filters repaired, and I see filters 5 and 6 years old that have the 1/4-inch fittings on them, thread fittings. It's the same one that came with the unit. That's something that should be changed as directed by the manufacturer, but it's darn sure not over a year. They also need to make sure they're capped, and caps are another of my pet peeves on air conditioning units. Why people don't put caps back on, I'll never understand. Temporary use equipment, portable ACs, blowers, dehumidifiers. Maintain a sign out and usage log for each piece of equipment. You don't know where that piece of equipment is. It's not going to do you any good when you need it. I've seen many times where, Bob comes out on call. He has a little AC condensation leak, puts a dehumidifier up there, and he goes on vacation. Nobody knows where that dehumidifier is. Residents get tired of it being there. They put it out in the breezeway because they're tired of it, and it's now gone. Which, great, we'll sell you another one, but that's not what we want. We want effective, efficient. We want to know where that piece of equipment is. We want to know how long it's been there, when it's due to come back. And when it comes back, clean it. If it needs filters or fluids or any other service, do it. It's a dehumidifier, spray a little bit of a bleach solution into the collector tank, because over time, those things will become very disgusting. If you clean them every time, it's pretty easy. If you continue to neglect, you will lose hours trying to fix it, and it will never be the same. Job-specific work areas. Some great examples are screen replacement tables. Look at the cost savings you can have by having in-house people go floor by floor and replace screens. It's a great appearance, especially on an older property, when you see nice screens intact rather than the falling apart, fraying, reflecting the sun because that's all that's left. It just really renews a property. Drawer repairs. Many older properties have problems with drawer repairs. They fall apart. You need somewhere that you can bring them in, glue them, clamp them, dovetail them, that they won't get knocked over and destroyed. Door slab preps. There's nothing like a little pre-made jig where you can just bring in your new door slabs and know where the hinges go, know where the knobs go. They're usually very, very close in every unit. You can order them pre-made, but a lot of times they are 30 days out, or you don't plan far enough ahead maybe. So why not be prepared? Motor repairs. There's nothing like trying to get a fan blade off of a 15-year-old condensing unit. It'd be nice to do it in the shade. It'd be nice to do it where you have a vise to hold onto it, where you can cut the back of the shaft and then take it off the back rather than trying to pull it up over the top. Also, pull motors. Replacing your own bearings in pull motors and seals is quite a good preventive and cost-saving method. And appliance servicing. Always good to be able to test equipment. How many times do they say, oh, I don't have an outlet, I can't test my dryers, I'm not sure what's wrong with it. I can't test ice makers. Ice makers are one of the most replaced items out there that can be tested and serviced. So that's something we would definitely want to be able to do it. These areas can be temporary. They could be a fold down from a wall. They could be where your golf cart comes out and you take these 4 items that are dedicated to make your table, 2 sawhorses and a slab. Very simple, but you want to dedicate that rather than trying to work on a crowded bench or on the back of a golf cart or on top of stacked paint buckets, which is again dangerous. So this is a nice looking organized shop. This was actually one of my past lives. He had a rodent problem. So he went and got all these wonderful, and the rodents went away because they stopped living in the boxes, the roaches went away. But there's one way he can improve that, and of course he was happy to jump on it once I saw it and told him, and that is to put labels on them. Labels make your life a lot easier. So if you need labels, you can email us. Custom catalogs at chadwellsupply.com. Include your name, address, supply account number, and currently we are printing them on Wednesdays. That's subject to change, but for now, that's where we are. Somehow I lost a slide. Maybe it didn't make this cut. Yeah, one of my slides disappeared. It doubled that one. One of the things I want to touch on also is the ordering. You want to make smart orders. You want to order a month's worth of supplies with little overlap. The larger orders are easy to put away right away. They're also easier on the delivery people, because then you're coming out consistently. Obviously, emergencies are great, but you don't want to see a delivery truck every 2 days. It's not a efficient or effective way of operating anything. I'll touch back on that slide. Meanwhile, let's EPA 608, we are currently offering online. If you want to sign up for that, you can go chadwellsupply.com online-EPA. We are also offering, for a limited time only, CPO online. This can be chadwellsupply.com/online-CPO. Our next invite will be Tuesday, April 14th. We're going to discuss how you can turn crisis into opportunity. There's no point in feeling sorry for ourselves. It's time to say, what can we learn? Where can we build? What can we do better? What have we been able to take away from this and spin out into a positive? So does anybody out there have questions while I go back and find my rogue slide?
Randy, and I know you may not have the answer to this, but I know along the lines that we have the web address and we can order bin labels, but I'm getting a few of the customers who are asking for like barcode readers and or QR readers. Is anybody on the call or maybe know that, is there a any thought given that we may start to try to transition to some kind of barcode reader for the bin label, so that way I can just kind of scan it in and it goes straight to whatever order entry program that I may be using, whether it's Yardi or one of the other formats that we may be a part of. Is anybody else doing that or getting requests for that type of bin label?
And I know it's on our wish list with Pete and some projects that we're trying to do, but yes, it's been brought up from several clients to be able to have labels like that.
Right, so it's probably going to be in the works and it's probably coming. We just don't have any kind of timeline at this point, but that's good that we're thinking about it. We're looking at it. Great, thank you, Aaron.
What I can tell you on that from the other side is the equipment to read it and control it is very expensive. So a lot of management companies are interested, but I think they're looking for an app that's going to come out on a phone.
Right, and there are already apps on the phone that you can do that with. That, you know, I mean, everybody, you know, I've got a QR reader on my phone and I can read it. You know, it helps me out because a lot of, I know the Whirlpool appliances, I can take, they've all got QR codes. So if I need the parts breakdown for that appliance, I can put my phone on there. It recognizes the QR code and brings up the breakdown for the actual parts list. And I know it's helpful in a lot of things that I do just using my simple phone. But you're right, some of the programs may have special tools that are required, but at least we had some kind of QR code or barcodes that they could actually start to use. But that's good stuff. On the marine gas that you were talking about, I totally 100% agree with you. For years, I used to just put regular gasoline in my lawn equipment and things that I have here at my house. And every season, it seemed like I was taking it in, either buying new carburetors, getting them rebuilt. But a good outlet for marine gas are ethanol free. Racetracks are limited, but just about every Wawa has the non-ethanol gas. So that was one of the things I was going to bring up. You made a good point that, but there are some outlets. They don't have to go down to the marine docks to get it, where it's a lot more expensive than just pulling up to a Wawa and filling up a 5-gallon gas can. Shameless really Wawa. I might have stock in them, so
it's really cheap right now too, which is good. If you have old cars, same thing. All right, I found my rogue slide. I was talking about placing larger orders, keep adequate slot, avoid store trips. I love the maintenance guys that love to go to the local store twice a week. And in the course of a year, they've wasted 2 weeks of your payroll. Stock all ordered items as soon as they become available. Put them in there immediately. Don't take what you need out of the box and push the box into the corner. That happens quite a bit. And limit the amount of used parts. There is nothing like a shop full of stripped parts from appliances. I was on one that had 15 washing machine motors. And I said, wow, that's a lot of motors. Why do you replace your washing machines? Oh, because the transmissions go bad. I said, so if the transmissions go bad, why do you need 15 motors? I think 3 is probably adequate. I had them look at their work orders. They've replaced 1 motor in the last year and a half. So used parts are great in certain numbers, but at some point when you're on a bulk replace, it's pretty much time to go. So that's where my rogue slide was. But
I guess the other thing, you know, you mentioned on was one of your pet peeves about caps missing when guys go to check refrigerant charges or do recovery, and they put their gauges on there and they access both the high and the low side. And typically what they do is they take the caps off, they set them on the concrete block or on top of the unit, it starts up. One falls off in the dirt somewhere and they can't find it. they've already dug through their bag and used all the loose extras that they may have had in the bottom. And at that point, I don't have another one. What's helped me over the years is when they take those caps off of the air conditioner, the hose that I pull it off my gauges, I screw it right back onto my gauges, so where I remove the hose. That way it's always there. I can't even put my hose back on until I take the cap off of where it came off on my hoses. They're the same diameter, same thread point. I kind of took that for granted. I thought everybody knew about that until I was working with a few guys and go, man, I've been doing this for 20 years. And that's just so obvious that I didn't even think about it. So that was one of the good points that you brought up. I just wanted to put my 2 cents worth on how helped me keep track of the caps.
Absolutely. And, just same as screws. That's one thing I'd love to see people take off their old units. All the little 5/16 screws and put them all instead of one holding a panel on.
Well, if you don't have 3 left over, did I really do the job right?
No, I'm thinking not. And yeah, and that Schrader valve, just drop the other one in the dirt to keep the ants away.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Randy. Good stuff. Thank you.
Randy, can I ask you, do you have a list saved that clients or management companies could use to reference as a startup shop? We've gotten a couple management companies where when they take over a new property, they don't have a shop set up or anything, and maybe they need a basic startup list to get a shop set up.
I have a couple. I would probably want to get with Van a little bit and update it. I haven't used it in several years. And again, we'd probably have 2. We would have a new property versus an older property. And on older properties, you would almost go by generations of 50s to 70s, and then maybe mid 70s to early 90s, and then 90s to the 10s, because there were dramatic differences in the materials inside of those buildings and what's needed.
I know, Randy, when we worked at Concord, we had new item startup list, and these were the items. So I know I may have a list. You may even have access.
Yeah, I have that exact list, but
okay.
It's out of date.
We'll go over it and get one together. We'll get it back over to Erin so she can use that going forward. And anybody else that may have suggestions, thoughts, or ideas on startup items. I just know that once we got the clubhouse and the shop, then we pushed the button and all the startup items came automatically.
Hey, Randy, I wanted to touch base and ask a question about SDS sheets and MSDS and all that. How do you incorporate the new changes? What's the best tip that you have for these shops that need to stay up to date?
My best tip for that from a management, because that's where I came from, is the purchase through get through their workers' comp carrier an online access. So everything is on a mobile site where they don't have to maintain those sheets, because those books are either outdated or they print everything in the page. And if you actually had to find one, you would never find it. So my best advice is they check with their workers' comp carrier to see if they provide free online access to MSD sheets.
So what you're saying, Randy, is MSDS do not have to be maintained in a file in a paper form. It can be a digital format now, and it's that's how both Concord and Avesta both did those. They completely eliminated.
Okay, but when you get into a low-income housing tax credit property, they want physical copies on site for inspection.
Then I would suggest that you have your customers limit the amount of products they use. Don't have 15 brands of coil cleaner, have 2. One for indoor coils, one for outdoor coils. Consistently purchase them and don't vary. That way you've only got maybe 2 dozen SD sheets instead of 147.
It's still going to be hard to do that because the way the SDS rule works on that is SDS must be filed in a secure place, whether it's digital or paper, and has to be in file accessible to all employees on the job site for a period of 30 years after the date of last use. So if you came onto a property where they've used this coil cleaner previously, I still have to maintain the SDS even if I choose to go or limit the amount of product. So I understand what you're saying, Randy. That'd be great in an ideal world if I could start up and limit them on what they bought. But once it's been introduced on that property, it's basically a part of that SDS file, I would say forever. Nobody's going to monitor it for 30 years after the date of last use, but it's just my 2 cents on that. It's, but changing from MSDS to SDS is the new format, and that was done to format the sheets in a correct chronological order. MSDS and SDS are essentially the same sheet. It's just the way the SDS now are formatted differently than the MSDS were. So great question.
I looked up
Hey,
earlier for us.
Van, also, Cynthia just reminded us that on the Chadwell website, underneath the properties account dashboard, they can access all of their SDS sheets there as well. So
anything they bought from us will be there digitally.
Right.
If our
Right.
workers' comp or overseer says that's acceptable, great. If I'm on a tax credit property, then I would have to print each one of those out and put them in the book. But I think that would be, as Eric said, you're going to have a combination of both. I think more and more you're going to see people transition to the digital copy rather than the hard paper, but we have both available from our website. But that's only for the items they have purchased from us, correct?
yes, which
Okay.
they don't need to be purchasing from anybody else.
I agree.
So Eric, you might want to check with them to make sure that that's a requirement and not just a local inspector's pet peeve. Because Concord is tax credit, and I had tax credit with Avesta as well, and they all accepted it.
Okay.
But you know, some of those state inspectors do have their little things that they're peculiar about, but I don't think they.
I think there's a difference between the HQS and the REACT, and the ones that I've
Oh,
had
yeah,
the comment come back is on those REACT inspections for Royal American.
Yeah, you're
REACT
talking
is
Section
a
8
lot
and
better.
HUD versus LIHTC are two different animals. So you're
Yeah.
exactly right, Eric. You're going to have different requirements on your Section 8 HUD or REACT inspections versus LIHTC.